the catalyst of change. I want to welcome everybody to another edition of Guidance for the Soul Live. It's unhinged and unhooked. We're going to talk about the nature of what it's like for people who are in that vision of I'm about to change into a butterfly. This is going to speak to many of a female, most likely. It's not meant to be gender biased, trust us. About this idea of I'm transforming myself into a new you, right? How many of us feel like we're changing into others' ideas about who we should be versus who am I really? Am I really the strong one? Or am I the tender-hearted soul? These are the challenges that many are hoping to see within themselves, thinking that somehow anger is the solution to all of our troubles. When you go to the nature of soul, you often find yourself battled and challenged for those ideas of I love who I am as a gentle soul, or I love who I am as anger, right? You don't want to go to this place of I love who I am no matter where I am in my mind, do I? When you do that idea of I'm here to make a change, is it really for the better of society is what we often get asked as souls. Trust me, it's not always known who's doing what and why on the soul level. Now, many of those are understanding that we are in touch with those higher visions of who we are. Some of them not so pleasant, correct? Many a soul is encountering the negativity of the world from the vision of I am now guiding those who are angry in their own way for doing what they did many a year ago that opened them up to the nature of this process. There are many souls who will quit the journey of soul in order to find the peace and prosperity and love and health that they do indeed desire. What we have going on is an attribute of soul that is of kindness. And you have to remember that kindness matters for many. Kindness invokes kindness most often. Anger often betrays itself upon the screen. We are not here to tell anybody how to be. But what we were saying to Brenda previously is she was of anger repressed. Okay? That's what a lot of people are saying. And what they're saying is that anger is often filled with rage. But when you dig a little deeper behind the scenes, you will often see the tears of regret, correct? Or is it more like my vision is not appreciative for those who want to make a change? The changes are all around us and upon us, is what many will say. And that change is often looking outside to see what is it that I am doing or being on the inside that is somehow not correct for someone else's vision of who I am to be. Do I challenge your authority in this world? Is where a lot of people are going. Who is it that are the wisdom keepers of this world? Are they the highest of the highs where all is accepted and loved and adored? Or is that your own soul telling you no matter what, I've got your back? That's what Brenda gets told by her own soul. When you open up to the nature of connecting with other sources of vision, such as God or anger, right? It's its own vibration that many inhabit as of late. It's not one source of anger. It's the anger of the planet that many are in tune with. We are either angry at ourselves for what we've done in our past many times, or we are angry at others for what they have done to us and we have to rise out of it without a guide, showing us how do we do that vision. Now, if you dig even deeper into some of the psychological characteristics of what soul is, it's a beautiful foundation of love. That's what this idea is of moving us forward that many inhabit in their minds. I want to be a change for good. And yet, in my habits of late, am I appropriating cultural transitions? You see, this is where many are going. I'm taking the ideas of one soul named Karl Marx, for instance, transposing his image upon the pages of a magazine, right? He's of strength, dignity, and very much of this idea of I would align with those souls who allow for their own vision of love to come through for them at this juncture in time. Those inspired by my work will lift themselves up and see a new bounty ahead, is what his desire was. His desire now it's not the same as what it was due to the nature of the conditioning of what he saw here on this plane. But in essence, he would cheer everyone on who wants to free themselves from the slavery state in which he also participated in. You see, he was understanding of what many of these of slave state vision had to go through, correct? His own vision is being taken to task by those of indigenous cultures who say he had the vision of a man who was part of the oppression of society, whether he knew it or not. His enactment of the play on this plane is how he feels. I was part of the play of life at one point in time. Now dismiss me from my prison, is what he would say, correct? He would say it felt like a prison for him to be labeled as anything other than beautiful at this point, and his vision is being discarded as unworthy of many ideas. And they would not even stick around to listen to the nature of what it is his soul actually needs from Brenda. Complete control and authority of the state. Right? How many people want to know what his soul would say at this point in time regarding where we are now? He would be cheering all of us on in our endeavors, for he has risen above the idea of needing to say anything more than research to your heart's content. You will never know what the desire is for anyone's soul unless you tap into the nature of who they are as soul, not as a man or as a woman or as a slave or as a guide. Guidance is distinctively similar to love. It is very fortunate that all of us are guiding each other on our paths of glory. We round them up. Put him in prison is where he was. He was of the prison generation as well. We were slaughtered is where others were taken into those visions. We are seeing that vision upon the screen very strong about what changes are to be made and by whom. So when someone comes upon the screen and says, I love this lady's vision for who she is, that is when we start to create the changes within that allow for people to do what they themselves feel is best for them in their moments. It is a loving guidance session for most souls. Okay, most are turned off by even the contemplation of various situations that are triggering of their minds. I get triggered by a word because it's been planted as negative and obscene in my vision. These emotional words gone awry. How about that for love? So no, we don't get to run over Brenda's guidance system, which says that certain topics are off limits, correct? Depending on the day and time in which we reside. She understands how inspirational souls like his were of his generation, and now they are back in full force, swinging hard and hitting hard, but not to the level in which he would have developed them if he was on this plane correctly right now. At that point, his vision was, I was destroyed by Brenda's research into the critique by indigenous cultures of her heart. It's a destruction of every soul to see someone else's soul disregarded just because they were mentioning one or two words of love. You see, that's where he was. I felt degraded and downplayed by my soul's vision, is where someone on the screen is, for thinking that I could somehow get across the message that I love myself for who I am. And yet this world tells us constantly in various ways that there is something wrong with who we are in each and every moment. You see, if I walk upon the plane, am I being labeled as anything other than soul at this point in time? Careful, people, where you go with this one. Okay? Your soul. How does that make you feel? Do you feel beautiful? Do you feel wise? Do you feel enchanted? Do you feel amazed? And that's the nature of the changes that often come through when you unite in unison with your own being, your own heart, and your own wisdom. What happens is that many start to collide on the soul level when they say, this one or this one isn't right for me. It's just that way. Some of us don't mix, right? We're a collective unit of energy at this point, but enhancing people's perception of who they are is where we often go. I love myself as I am. And yet others are saying, no, you can't possibly because of the color of your skin. And others are saying this is a hurrah for all of us, correct? This is very much tied into the nature of Marx and his vision. And it is very much important for people to understand the nature of souls. When they cross, they do inhabit those visions of love of all of us. However, they would not degrade their own vision. We honor them for who they were and who they are as souls, loving themselves gently through this process of deconstruction of the internet that has so many caretaking not only their hearts but the hearts of others. And when those hearts of others start to say, but I don't like you as much as somebody else, others will start to adjust their vision and say, oh, I must be not as good or not as, quote, worthy of someone else's attention, correct? I've been labeled many things. One of the things that I've been labeled with is that of mental illness. Literally recently, due to the nature of someone else's triggered response to a tragic situation brought to light. Do you want to know why some of those videos are not as clear and concise and constructive as others would like? Due to the nature of Brenda's soul that said, I will place all those videos on there for public consumption for those of us who are rising through this process of channeling or guidance from just our own vision. And what those visions are instructive visions of how many soul visions either I am placing upon the screen that I may be connecting with. Heart and hand, my friends. Heart and hand. I do it for those who are in the process of growing through their own wisdom, to show you don't just wake up one day and immediately spout words of wisdom that are the most profound words that you could bring through. How many people are editing their videos? Brenda edited her videos in the beginning because it was so spotty. And she said, there's a reason I'm going to do this. If you go to a group where you're allowed to practice and have someone listen to you, it is a channeling experience extraordinaire. That's the nature of who Marx was. He now realizes in his own wisdom, I was most likely bringing through soul vision without even knowing it. And that's the beauty of our inspirational works of wisdom. And that's what we want to honor for all of our hearts, all of our works of art. And Brenda gives everyone their own vision of you are a work of art, as you. How dare you look at me any different? And yet, we struggle in the hearts and minds of many who say life is not fair for many. And that is his vision, is we push forth in our vision of equality and equity for all. However, many of this plane are still vibrating in the vision of my afterlife is my end goal, versus the reality of the nature of projection of soul vision upon the screen. I miss you, I say to my loved ones. Others will say good riddance. I'm now able to freely create from a place of love of self without their input as negative. This is you from another plane coming through. This is what people need to understand. Don't belittle the souls of trial and error. Okay? Many are on the screen doing their works of wisdom, planting the seeds of love for everybody. And yet that is considered the most demeaning thing ever by somebody else. Because in essence, it means their, quote, enemy is no longer the enemy. And that's the battle of defeat, right? The defeat. I'm defeated by someone who says you're not the most loving soul in the world. Who's going to take up that mantle? In this day and time, who gets to take up that mantle of I love everyone as if they were me? Do you know how destructive that can be to the voice of reason for so many souls? And that's why we plant the seeds of love wherever we can, and we assume that there is a violent projection of death upon Brenda, is what she was receiving. She was in the vibration of shots fired. In essence, she gets told those higher level wisdom in order to show people the future of what we create. What's coming to us in our vibration, depending on where we are in our place and time. Now, if you can validate that vision with the news, you're hitting upon a vibration of love of all, because most are saying, I can't handle the news. It's too violent. It's too deadly. It's too arrogant, depending on which part of the screen you're looking at, right? Some people will say that's an arrogant projection that she's putting out by saying, I know how to bring forth the future and bring it back to me. It's because I've united with my whole soul from another level of love, right? There's impossibilities because I'm still creating, but since my life has been very simple and completely like unimagined destruction, there are very few lifelines left for someone like me. We tend to go to this place in many a mind that we are the old souls of this world, filled with wisdom and wonder and cherished for who we are. And yet, in actuality, the vision of what is old is very complex and nuanced. It is not meant to be a degrading of who we are. It's meant to be the wisdom of who we think we are. Correct? I am the candle in the wind. Brenda walks with Diana. And she no longer carries that torch of princess. She was sitting upon the path of her death, right? It was her formative years that Brenda was of love of all, is what many are saying. The children of the world are often the most degraded in their wisdom when they come through with those voices of reason and love from above. And we deny those children their wisdom, their strength, for she herself identified with those who said, I knew I was connecting to something other than what everyone told me I was here. My messages of love that came true are there for many to enjoy and reveal with wonder. You should see the expressions upon the face of many when you go through this place of love of all. Diana herself is a supportive vision and says, she was being betrayed by her own friends in their visions on a soul level about what it is that they themselves needed to hear from her about their own conditioning of their mindsets. Do you know what that's like? To know that society's changes are a catalyst for the individual most often? We often think that those of us who are here to spread the word or the light or the mantle of soul are somehow the ones instigating the changes that must occur. Often, we are the wisdom workers, looking behind the scenes, analyzing the data, and saying, where do I fit in? That's where many go. Where do I fit in this journey that has me belittled on one side or the other, depending on where I land? And that's the nature of what her own vision was. I'm here to hold it's like the lamp of light, right? That's the light workers. We understand those. Those are those fiery ones, right? Not always. Light is light. It's not anything other than a vibrational word that others are identifying with. There is an enlightenment of our bodies and our wisdom. We can reach into those stratospheric conditions and bring down the wisdom of the enlightened states of being. Those are very similar. You will feel it in your body as energy within. You will hear the wisdom coming from various sources of love. So others would assume Princess Diana, right? She's Diana. She no longer wants to carry. The cradle of romance is where she's at now with her loved one on the other side of the veil. And yet others would demean her for her vision of intermixing of racial heritage with her loved one of late. We are being demeaned in society for taking the mantle of love. And yet she said, I projected my love in the best way that I could so Brenda could see the force of victims that come through saying, keep going. You find your torch very gently. But others are here to skyrocket to the end zone. Brenda's always projecting herself, moving the football forward. But in essence, it's a torch to light the way for others to see how can I help myself through torturous visions on the mental level. This is where psychology and illumination of it from a higher vision comes in. We don't demean anyone of the mind. But when you start to bring in the energy vision of my body is now completely healed, I'm all whole, that's what many are assuming. You discard the vehicle and you vibrate in the beauty of it. So my own limitations in my mind about my body are just that, limitations in the mind. Or projections from someone else that there's something wrong with who I am, and how many people want to know what that feels like to hear those coming back at you. You see, when I look into the mirror, am I looking at myself in the most adoring and loving way, or am I seeing the ages upon my screen? We all laugh at some point because we think, oh, we're all that and more. But we never did light the torch for a certain soul who said, I will kill you on demand. You see, there are those souls from other realms that others are tapping into who hear the negativity based on where they themselves vibrate. And that's what you have to understand, is that many will say, oh, I'm not in a good place. Let me lift myself up by my bootstraps is where some are. And that's a hard place because many people are not prepared to lift themselves up first before they go through the process of soul discovery. So That's why we want you to enhance your vision of the discovery of who I am from a place of love of myself, first and foremost. My family, my friends, and whatnot is very much acknowledged, is very much loving. Whether or not you feel it as such is a whole different story. And then we vibrate out of the nature of who we think we are, and we start to see ourselves in a different light. We start to see ourselves more vibrant, more alluring to those visions of love, correct? Not always. Some of us are very much, I'm still in that I'm of love of myself and my vision. And that's where we want to talk to the audience about your vision creation with those around you. You will create many visions of love of yourself, of others, of the wisdom, of the guidance, or of the people and the planets. The planets are about to be discovered from different reigns of opportunity. And that's what someone needs to understand is we have souls on the line who are very much of planetary alignment. That's another vision of discovery of who you think you are, because it's from one plane and one perspective, but you can vibrate into those higher fields of enlightenment through every step of your journey. This is what many don't understand is people are utilizing various tools of discovery thinking that one is better than another. It's all dependent on how it is utilized and who it is for. Once you go to your own soul, you start to drop off a lot of that conditioning or not. It depends. Some of us are very much holding on to those ideas that we once loved that held us up in our minds and said, ooh, I love that one. That one feels good. There's no discovery of self if you're in the vision of I am of other only. And this is why Brenda herself was getting, you have to go in and discover more of your own vision of who you are from a different plane other than, oh boy, any of the faiths first and foremost, because those are very high in their vibration, but they're also very conflicting in their wisdom. And that's when you'll get the conflicting ideas coming in. And so that idea of let's all belittle everyone around us for whoever they are so we can all change into what? Angry souls? We don't want to be angry. We want change. And everyone is always saying, oh, the wisdom is within and the change comes from within. It does. What we are projecting is our own environmental influences. But many who have never touched a book of soul or a guide or had their own soul come through would not know what that feels like for those of us who ride the waves of love. Right now, we're in the peaks and valleys of soul. It's not bad. It can be hard to hear some of the negativity that we surround ourselves with, and that can be very much why people in various stages of their growth and development will kind of withdraw from either the internet or from those around them who are very much in this idea of I'm of conviction and I need you to see my point of view. Whether or not you agree with it or not, you're going to agree with me. See, there are those who are like, either you agree with me or we're done. And that's the nature of where many find themselves, is they're very much, I need everyone around me to be on the same page so we can create this magnificent work of art called soul. It's one level of understanding of vibrational frequencies and love. It's not the whole enchilada. It's not just about humans. By all means, let's tap into the nature of the consciousness of the planet, right? That vibrational frequency of love. Ooh, that one gets very high, very fast when Brenda goes into that work. This is why we want to honor all of your souls who are saying, I want to make a change and I want to make a change for the good. Ask yourself the questions. Who gave you the authority to try to change anybody else? And that's when people start to back away. Because you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You don't know what pain or trauma another may or may not be dealing with. that allows that person to take a break from your vision of what needs to be done and when. We are not on a timetable, people, for this idea of racial equivalency. It's equity and justice that they're looking for. But when you go to an individual and say, you must be this or you are that, you are hitting the wrong notes for most of us. That's the nature of soul. You rise out of that idea of antagonizing others into victimhood so that they what? Rise out of it. Many will stay in it and be bogged down for their entire lives. You would be surprised. Now, when that vision gets unwound, right? Most will say, oh yeah, we know it. So that's why we are saying you have to think carefully, who is it that is giving themselves the authority to tell anyone else how they need to be in their moment as souls walking this plane? It's the hardest message. The heavy hitters of soul come through and want to cheer those on that are striving for those higher vibrations, those ideas of love of all, that has us taking those steps towards equality and equitable states of being for everybody. But this is a process that's going to take years, decades, not systematic oppression visions. But the light beings are here to shine their light on what it is to actually feel the equality within. When you feel despair or discrepancy, you're going to know that you're not on the right path with somebody. And that's the nature of what Brenda herself went through. I'm on a change path. And then she starts to get wisdom handed to her. You need to back off of those telling you what you are. Don't mess with the soul wisdom message from this one. Okay? People think they get to tell everyone else how to be, even if they're of the light. And if they did, they would know better. They might be able to bring us those words of wisdom, but how dare you tell a soul what it is they need to know? Unless you are actually bringing through the wisdom from their own highest vision, don't even think about doing soul work. It's hard. It's destructive for so many people's mindset to think that they've somehow tapped into the nature of the high, only to be told, you tapped into the ego nature of who I am. And that's what can happen. It's possible to do that work. It's possible to bring through wisdom. And it's possible to bring through loving words of wisdom and guidance. There's a difference between wisdom and guidance. Many are bringing through the wisdom of what is. That's a difference than I'm here to guide souls on various paths that they may be on, with concrete and specific evidential traits of worth, right? This is what people are saying. There's a difference in that idea of I can give you your soul's information versus I'm here to bring through the wisdom of love from various sources of love and light and wisdom and guidance, right? It depends. Many are bringing through a combination. Some are bringing through one or the other. It's very distinctive. And when you hit those high notes of wisdom, many start to drop off because they think it doesn't really apply to their lives. It's very much succinctly distinguishable for those who know what that means. So for those butterflies in the making, we want to honor your vision, because this is truly what it feels like when you go through this process and you're in the chrysalis stage, sitting there, beating your wings inside, hoping you can just fly, break through and fly away. It's a continual process. You do not go through one stage and then just fly free forever. It's usually more of a process of I'm expanding and contracting, and then I'm expanding, and then I'm contracting, and then I'm expanding, and I'm contracting. It's a very nuanced vision. It depends on who it is. Of course, many have had their spontaneous awakenings, but there's very much depending on each and every soul, what their experience is going to be like until they walk the path of love. And that's the hardest one to walk in some people's minds, because it means that they get disregarded as less than by others. So with that, we want to honor you. Take care. Have an amazing discovery process with your own soul, and have an amazing day.